this is only a tiny minority. When they're threatening you and you have to get the police involved. And
Did you have to do that?
And we had to do that, yeah.
Did you ever come close to managing Manchester United?
I believe when Ollie, I was in the frame a little bit.
Does it haunt you that you didn't get the chance or won't get the chance to manage that club?
Listen, if you're in football management and that comes along, then don't get me wrong, you'd have jumped at the chance.
Giggs isn't even in the Premier League's Hall of Fame, Steve.
Ridiculous.
Welcome to Sacked, the show powered by Trading 442 that takes you behind the power and the politics of the Premier League. We're joined in the owner's box by a man of real pedigree today, Manchester United title-winning captain, a legend and a former manager of, among others, Newcastle, Sunderland, Aston Villa, Birmingham City. Steve Bruce, great to see you, Steve.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks. It is great to see you, and thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Here on Sacked. Okay, let's get into it, Steve, and let's talk Crisis Club FC. And I'm glad there are other clubs in crisis at the moment, not just this one. But Liverpool defeats 4 successive Premier League defeats.
See this journalism in you straight away. They're in crisis club because they've lost 4.
Well,
they've lost 4 games.
Yeah,
and it just shows you what can happen in football. Mm-hmm. Where a month ago, 6 weeks ago, we're all lauding with these signings they've made. Liverpool are going to run away with it. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it hasn't quite happened for whatever reason. You know, all of a sudden, there's question marks against the manager, who, when he walked into the building 15 months ago with Liverpool, everybody lauded him for how well he done. He left it alone. They didn't buy a player. And he proved to be a remarkable signing, a great coup for the club to replace somebody as good as Klopp. The fellow walked through the door and smashed it, really, and he's had a tough month. But you know, whether you're Liverpool manager, Man United manager, Chelsea manager, it can happen. It can happen, especially in the Premier League.
Mm-hmm. Steve, how's he going to be feeling though? Because you know, I've now had the fortune in my career of working both sides of the fence. So you mentioned as a journalist, but also as a PR advisor to a lot of clubs who are at the top, who work at the top end of town or at the top end of the Premier League. What's the pressure like for Slot as things stand with 4 defeats? So I think we can go back to history when, you know, the great Liverpool sides of the 80s may not have had the greatest starts to the season and have still gone on to win a title.
Yeah, of course.
But the pressure and the intensity has changed. How does he cope with that kind of intensity?
Well, the one thing that it'll test you to the limit of losing 3-4 games on the spin, because if you're at that end of the table there where Liverpool expect them to be, then you're 3-4 games always from being, like you said before, I don't think they're in crisis. I still think they're going to be there or thereabouts, even though it's difficult because they've lost 4 games. Huh?
When we say crisis, though, Steve, so it's immediate. That clearly is immediate. The media love a club in crisis, right? It feeds the narrative of the Premier League. But you've been in situations where you've been struggling to get a result at a top Premier League club, for example. But did you feel that it was a crisis?
No, I think what you feel is you try, and I always tried in management, and you try and keep an equal, that you don't get too carried away when you win, and you don't beat yourself up too badly when you get beat. And I think that's key to it. You have to remain pretty level-headed about it. Don't beat yourself up that other people can see that weakness in you. So I think that's a huge, huge part. And only when you're in it can you understand of what it's like to absorb it all, because you're the boss. You're in charge. It's your responsibility.
But what is it like? How do you
difficult. You don't sleep it. Have I picked the right team? Have I prepared them all? The whole thing whirls around you. And no matter how much experience you've got with it, certainly experience helps you deal with it better. That's what it does. When you're younger, you still think you can fight the world and you bring it all on. When you get a bit older and you analyse it and the whole thing, then you must not beat yourself up too much and try and stick to your basics and your principles of what got you the title last year. How did we win the league? How did it react? You probably never lost 4 games all season last year. So to deal with it now, he'd be looking at himself, I'm sure, and asking, how can I handle this situation and handle it in the right way?
Yeah, you know, I think we don't advise Liverpool, but if I had been involved in that process, I probably would have laid the foundations earlier when they're on their brilliant, glorious winning run at the start of the season. So forget the Community Shield, but they had a great start to the season.
Yeah.
They beat Bournemouth first game, very, very dramatic, and then went on that sequence of victories. I thought they should have I would have certainly not been against them laying the foundations at that point of, we have just spent a lot of money building a new team because we've had certain players that we've lost. Trent Alexander-Arnold has gone to Real Madrid. We've just brought Darwin Núñez, for example. We've just brought a new team in. We are still bedding in. And I'd have used that winning run to feed a narrative that I am still, we are adapting to change. They didn't do that. Everyone just thought they spent 400 million, they've got a stronger team than ever, and they're going to blow everyone away. And now everyone's looking at this club thinking, okay, what has changed? Well, they spent 400 million. They've lost Trent Alexander-Arnold. They sold Darwin. All those things, I think, are affecting them. I think they could have changed the course of history with the way that the people are looking at them if they'd have taken those steps, if the manager had taken those steps and put that narrative out there.
Yeah, maybe, but you're Liverpool. And it's like Manchester United, there's an expectation. And especially after you've won the league last year. And as I said, we were all blown away with what they've done on top of winning the league and the squad of players they've got. They've added to it, and we all looked and went, wow, that's some strike force they've put together. Mm-hmm. That is some squad of players they've put together. What you don't put in there is sometimes to take a little bit of time to settle into the Premier League, especially if you haven't played in the Premier League.
Yep.
That's why Man U's two big players this year, Cunha and Wemo, they've played in the Premier League. They know what it's all about. Mm-hmm. The boy Wirtz, for example, hasn't. And it'll take him time. There's no doubt he's a top player, the kid. But it takes time to... I've just been let go by Blackpool at the lower end. Same thing. 12 players in, 12 players in, 12 players out. We've got a much better squad on paper. Doesn't quite work out like that, and I've just experienced it. Not the top end, but certainly in the lower division, and there's constant change in the lower divisions. That's how hard it is because people have only got 1 year and 2 year contracts. They're not tied in for 4 or 5 years. So it does take time. Sometimes you need a time. Whether you're all of them great players who they've brought in, sometimes you need a little bit of time to settle into your environment. That is the unfortunate thing in football now, where nobody gets time.
Nobody has. At the sharp end, Steve. So let's say Sunderland, Newcastle, because very demanding sets of supporters. What's the biggest challenge that you would face as a manager? What are the biggest challenges here for Slot? Is it boardroom executive ownership? Is it supporters? Because supporters, social media is no friend for him. Is no friend for Slot right now.
I don't think it's a friend.
But then also the media. As well. What would your priorities be as a manager in 1, 2, 3?
I don't think you can get embroiled in social media. I don't think you can get embroiled in it because I don't think it's a good place for anybody. Mm-hmm. It thrives on people wanting to have a go in their opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think you have to look at that and just dismiss it. Mm-hmm. With Newcastle and Sunderland, with big clubs, Newcastle was not trying to win at the top end. When I was there, was how do we stay in the Premier League? Which was never enough for the Newcastle people, of course. So, it's a different scenario. But I think you have to make sure that, you focus on what you're doing. How do I make the team better? Hasn't quite happened. We're all expecting Liverpool to get better.
Did you ever allow, or have you ever allowed social media sentiment or media I'm talking influential players, to affect your judgment and your thinking?
No, I think it can be difficult. There was one guy in particular who came after me at Newcastle, where from day one, his thought was I should never be managing Newcastle. That was his perspective. It was his right. That's what he did. And from day one, he made it his personal input to try and derail me. Mm-hmm. And in the end, probably I focused too much on him. Too much on him because of some of the stuff. And honestly, journalism's changed as well here, where we all got a job to do, and I can fully understand it. But sometimes the journalists now are not even interested in the truth. They're interested in the story and getting a click. And getting a click on, people don't buy newspapers anymore, but they tell me, I still enjoy it, but they click on their computer or their phone and they want that click rather than, is it a really legitimate story?
But is that a product of, because if we went back to your career, say at your peak at, say, Manchester United, realistically, there are only a few people covering the club, and I suspect relationships would have been far more intimate with journalists because there were fewer of them. But we look at the situation today, and you're probably looking at faces in front of you at a press conference because there are so many people there that you don't even recognise anymore.
No,
I would imagine that. But that's
changed. Look, everything's sort of evolved, hasn't it? You know, where the journalist who used to strike a relationship with you or wanted a story from you, and then you expected them to just listen. If you say Steve Bruce had a poor game on Saturday and was responsible for the first game, you accept all of that. I think when it becomes personal, like it does become the journalist, in my opinion now, they become personal on it. And certainly, you know, they don't give you the slack that the old journalist, maybe when you had a rapport with them or give them a story, maybe Steve, all about relationships. That doesn't seem to exist anymore.
Yeah, no, look, Steve, I would say, you know, I go back to my careers and we've known each other an awful long time.
Yeah.
But
well, I've known each other a long time, but I wouldn't expect you to say, "Oh, Steve Blue was fantastic every week."
No,
Do you know what I mean?
No, sorry. The point I was going to make is, unfortunately, I was one of those people who, when I could smell blood,
he came after.
Yeah, I didn't go after, but it's just it's the job. And
by the way, in management, then when you're after the blood, is then how you handle yourself and how you come back at it.
Because
how you
easy
respond.
is it to remain dignified? You've got so many questions to answer from so many people, from television, from radio, from written newspapers. Well, you would look at it as
I have to say, Newcastle in particular was the one where I felt it most, that I didn't fear going in front of them. I was wary of what I was going to say in case it was interpreted in a different way.
Yeah.
So I was always trying to be as honest as I possibly could, but I was always guarded. I was guarded up there because, you know, it was, and all the journalists seemed to write the same thing. You know, that they didn't have their own opinion, apart from maybe one.
You know, when you just said that about Newcastle, I felt that and saw that and sensed it at the time, and now you've just confirmed what I was already thinking whenever I saw you on TV. At a press conference, which is exactly what you just said, that you weren't Steve Bruce, that you were you were being overly cautious and careful about what you said because you knew that everything would be interpreted in a way that you didn't want necessarily to be interpreted.
Absolutely right.
But when we talk about fans as well, because, you know, I saw the situation with Pereira at the weekend with Wolves. New contract a few weeks ago, defeat at home to Burnley, and the circumstances, 96th minute. I mean, okay, brilliant result for Burnley. The fans come after the players, the fans come after the manager. And you've had that at Villa, didn't you, as well? When I've
had a little.
Didn't a supporter throw a cabbage onto the pitch?
He walked down the stadium, and threw. I don't know how he got a cabbage into the ground, but I thought it was a football to start with, and then it was a cabbage, and you thought, well, what's all that about? You know, but look, it's one person. It was one person's view that, and you have to try and accept that. I think, where's that come from? Of course, it gets put out everywhere, you know, and
but there's no hiding.
There's no denying or hiding it.
There's no hiding place from what's just happened. That is an incident.
Insult
that's
to you.
news.
It's
an
insult to
insult.
you.
Yeah.
Where's you got the idea of the cabbage? I really don't know. I'd like to ask him now, by the way, but
we'll get him on.
We'll see if we can
find him.
But at the time, as I said, I thought it was a football, but it certainly was a cabbage.
Yeah, but how did you feel about it? It's an insult at the time, but how do you feel? How do you feel about that?
I think if you're going to go into management, thankfully Villa had won something like 4 games in 54. This great big club, which was a fantastic club. Let me tell you, terrific club. It was in a bad way, and probably the reason why I get it is because it's in a post situation. I'd like to think that made it slightly better. We lost the playoff final, and it didn't last long after the new owners come in. But it was a fantastic club, and that was another one where it had fell from the heights of not just falling out of the Premier League, it had gone to like winning 4 games in 50 odd. I mean, I remember going to Reading and we win. You think we won the European Cup again. It was like, wow, this is Aston Villa we're talking about, you know? And it was a big challenge, but really, really enjoyed the challenge of dealing with what was a pressure time at the time.
But how difficult is it to get fans? Do you feel you have to get fans back on side when, look at the situation Wolves are in at the foot of the Premier League? Fans, I'm not saying they're deserting them, but I could see a lot of empty spaces at Molineux at the weekend. And clearly things have changed.
Neil, they've lost 2 or 3 of their big players in the summer, and have they really replaced them? I'm not so sure they have. And then it becomes difficult. You keep losing your best player, and your best player in particular, Cunha, who's just gone and lit up Man U at the moment. They're very difficult to replace, and when you don't replace them as well as what you think you should be doing, then you're up against it. And, you know, you say about Wolves, and West Ham is another one now, and, you know, they keep changing the manager, and I worked for David Sullivan and for a long time.
Yeah,
and the one thing that he did back in my day was give you a bit of time, you know, give you a bit of time. But unfortunately, now I think we all understand that all of us, you're 4 or 5 games away from being at your time in crisis. I don't think you are, but that's the word you used, and I think we all understand that's the way it is these days. You can go a month, and if you don't get a result in it, no matter whether you're Wolves, you're West Ham, or you're Man United, you're in trouble.
And what about Forest as well? Because they're on to their 3rd manager, and okay, you have the swing of the brilliant result against Porto on Thursday for Sean, and then immediately back into the Premier League, 0 time to prepare. From the Thursday night against Porto, Friday, Saturday, travel to Bournemouth, Sunday, they play Bournemouth and they're beaten.
Yeah, and the difficult time is we all know managers need time on the grass. And when do you get that when you're in the season? You don't, especially if you're playing in Europe. All you do is play and recover. So you can only get your point across in certain times. I'm sure Daishi will get it right. He always has done. He makes his side really difficult to beat, difficult to play against. And it's a shrewd appointment by Notts Forest, a very, very clever one in my opinion. I have to say what went on before there, where a manager gets 5 Premier League games and all of a sudden Ange Postecoglou is a dud. I mean, he was fantastic at Celtic, and when he first came down his first year at Tottenham, he is the way Tottenham want to play, the Tottenham way. His all action, all terrific. Wins a European Cup with Tottenham. All of a sudden, the fella's a dud and he doesn't know what he's doing. Hasn't got a plan B. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
The fella's multi-talented. He's won everywhere he's been, in every country he's been.
You should be his PR.
I should be his PR because I feel for him at the time to think.
I could have done the job you've just done for the guy.
He's been 4 weeks in it, 5 games.
Yeah.
You're sacked. I just find it staggering.
Yeah. Well, they're on to Sean now, and they've got a big few weeks coming up. And yeah, good luck to Sean Dyche. He's someone that we both know very well. Manager approval results, they're just coming in. Big swing this week for Ruben Amorim. We'll talk about that in a few moments' time. We're about to publish those results. Some big changes for him, not unexpectedly, but because of those 3 successive victories and a big one at the weekend against Brighton. Steve, I want to get into our second section, which is psychology. I'm fascinated by the subject because when I was a journalist, and we just talked about it before, is when I smelt blood, I put a lot of...
You were good at it.
Sorry?
You were good at it. You were good at smelling the blood.
I developed the sense after, because I was in it so long. I worked at the sharp end. Yeah, I could see it coming, and I also recognised that the more pressure you put on a situation, something has to change. But also, since I've worked on the other side of the fence, I've seen what it does to people, Steve. I see what it does. I see what the end game and the beginning of the end. I've seen what it looks like for managers. I see how they change. I see how their personality changes. I see how it affects their family. I see how it affects their children. I see how it affects people around a football club. And yes, the pressures and the demands of working in the Premier League are huge. And a lot of people would say, and you get very handsomely rewarded for that. And every Premier League manager, fact, gets very, very handsomely financially rewarded. But what does it do to you psychologically? How do you cope with?
Well, take away money, because I always think money find you.
Easy thing to say.
Easy thing to say. Even the money side is, I have to say, over the 40 years I've been involved with football, the most disappointed times I've got is when you get sacked, especially in a high-profile one, because no matter what you think or whatever you do or whatever industry you're in, wherever you work as the cafe down the road and somebody sacks you, it's the worst feeling that you think you failed.
Mm-hmm.
And you
And
have
you
to
feel like you failed.
You feel like you failed. And there's certain, I mean, I feel terrible what's just happened at Blackpool because I had all the resources, had a good owner, good people who work there, but it's probably the last time because I don't think I'll put myself in the situation again. And it really, really disappointed me, upset me. But because it's in the lower divisions, nobody really writes about it or talks about it. It's in the sharp end, i.e. in the Premier League, right in your face. How do you deal with it? It is so difficult. When I was young, I nearly walked away from management. When I got the sack at Huddersfield, I was 40. And it was the first time, really, I'd had major, major disappointment. Of course, you lose a football match, you lose a cup final. It happens, it's football, eh? When you're sacked, my first time I got it, for the first time in my life, I became a little bit reclusive. I didn't go out of the house, didn't want to go anywhere. Felt as if everybody was looking at me, as if to say, oh, Steve Brucey's just failed at Huddersfield. It was a kicking, which took me a while to get over it, and I didn't think I was ever going to go back to management again because I thought...
Did you think what would you have done? Did you have ideas about what the alternatives were?
What the ideas? Well, before I went into management, I always thought I'd work with the younger element. I had soccer schools. I had Honda on board to be my sponsor and main sponsor. And I've had this thing about taking football camps all around the country into deprived areas with Honda on board. That's what I was going to do. So I thought maybe I'll do that. But I don't think I've ever spoke about it before, but I became reclusive. So much so on my 40th birthday, my missus had to force me out of the house. And, to celebrate it, she had a bit of a surprise when I says, John, I don't want to go. And in the end, sort of forced me to go because it was my 40th, but I didn't really want to go. And it was a lesson for me to say, hang on a minute, all through, especially the last 10 years, I've done this and I've played for Man U and I've captained Man U and we've won trophies. All of a sudden, this is a different animal. And I'd just been sacked by Huddersfield. And I took it really, really personally, really, really badly. And then decided that if I'm going to go into management, and I found it really difficult, and I'm not going to get the sack again. So try and learn from the experiences I've had. Of course, you do get the sack again, but there's no denying that it hurts yourself, it hurts your family and the people around you who care about you, because you are under the pump and under the microscope, and we've just seen.
So why did you put yourself back through it?
Because I love football. It was the only thing I ever knew, only thing I could ever do. It was the only thing I really wanted. And how lucky am I? I've took the sackings on the chin. I would like to think I've handled the dignity of it all. However, the love of football and what it means to me and how I really, really enjoy, and even in management, winning on a Saturday is far better winning as a manager than as a player.
Really?
Really.
Why?
Well, because you set out the training, you pick the team, you are responsible. It's your job. Doesn't matter whether, the 10 of them play poorly. If they win on a Saturday, it's more satisfying than it ever was as a player. So, and I didn't win much as a manager at all, but I really enjoyed winning on a Saturday.
Yeah, but you've had a lot of jobs. You've had a lot of jobs in it. Could you feel, Newcastle, Sunderland, Villa? Could you feel the jungle drums? Could you feel it?
Certainly.
Did you develop in the way that I developed a sixth sense of knowing you're under pressure here?
Certainly,
did you have a sixth sense as a head coach or a manager?
I think when the support turns on you, and I have to say, Manchester United supporters are quite unique. I don't think they've ever come after a manager. I don't think in the last 10 years, I don't think they've really, the crowd. So you're getting sacked in the morning.
Vocally inside, I think you're right.
Vocally inside the stadium, I think when the support turns on you, and ultimately it did at Newcastle. I had one game in charge when the new regime came in. And
1000th game.
My 1000th game, yeah. But I knew that I had, the first conversation I had with Amanda was, look, I'm the only negative left in the building. So, you have to think about moving me on, And really all she came in to do, her and her husband, was to have a conversation with me that, how can we help? And I did have to put that on her. I never really wanted that conversation.
Did you feel, so you felt it inside the stadium, but outside the stadium with how did fans, how did supporters and club treat you externally?
I think that I knew that my time was up. We got beaten the game.
No, but I know that you knew that was coming, but with fans outside St James's Park, if you were going for dinner in the area, could you go for dinner in the area and be left alone to enjoy dinner with family, with friends, with your coaching staff? Would you be left
I think
alone?
you'd have to be wary towards the end. Towards the end, it became a little bit tough. And by the way, this is only a tiny minority. When they're threatening you and you have to get the police involved, then the ugly side of it. And
to do that?
And we had to do that. Yeah, we had to do that in the end, where you knew that this is bordering on being ridiculous. And I'm one of them, and I'm a Newcastle fan, and I could understand that frustration. They didn't want to be a team that, his aspiration was to just stay in the Premier League. And that was my job. That was my remit. I wouldn't change it. I'll have to tell you, I've managed Newcastle, my hometown club, which I thought in the circumstances I did okay with. However, there's no doubt it was difficult. But then again, so was Villa, so was Sunderland.
But calling the police, Steve, that's as extreme as it gets, right?
Well,
but what was the build-up? Then what happens for you?
Well, you lose a game. And unfortunately,
managers don't generally call the police up. So, but what happened?
It was. I needed a bit of protection on the house. So, it was something which I don't really, because I don't judge that on the support of Newcastle. The supporters of Newcastle are a magnificent lot. We see it now, and we've seen it for years. When a minority, and I believe it's all fed by social media, in the hatred that brews up on that, was something what we had to call the police. When they're threatening to kill you and all the rest of it, then it is ridiculous. And it bordered on being ridiculous at times.
Of course. I mean, when you have to call the police. How did it affect did your wife ever say to you in situations like that, Steve?
Towards the end, and of course, I managed through COVID too. So towards the end, my wife went back to Cheshire where she could breathe a little bit, and it was pretty normal for everybody because football carried on during the COVID time. We handled it like that, but it wasn't easy for any of the family at all. Thankfully, my mum and dad weren't alive to see it. But it was certainly difficult times.
No, I can see that, and I hadn't realised that it was. I know the impact that it has on people, but I didn't realise that you'd that you'd been forced to go to those lengths.
Unfortunately,
when you're a manager of Newcastle. Just finally on this subject of psychology, do we in the media, not just the media, but football clubs, supporters, are we too liberal with this word, sacking?
Yeah. I'll ask any individual, have you been sacked before?
There have definitely been times where I've come to the end of a contract with a client and they've said, thanks for all your work, and it's been great to you, and we're not renewing it. And to me, there have been times when it's been fine. It's okay, well, I'm happy because I actually wanted to go and do something else, and it was a natural end. Sometimes it's a natural end.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I would say.
So you haven't had the brutality. You haven't had the brutality of somebody coming up to you and saying, "Steve, you're out of your work," and I haven't had anybody demanding it from externally. So I haven't experienced. So yes, I've not had contracts renewed. What I haven't experienced is social media. Looking at social media, saying sack Neil Ashton. Yeah.
I haven't walked out of the house where people are saying you're not doing your job properly. I haven't turned on the radio saying you're not doing your job properly. So I've never had to live with those extremes and those pressures. That's exactly. And you have.
And when it's public and you had a public sacking, then you have to take it on the chin. Whether your job logs in the street, if you've lost your job, your employer comes up to you and says, "I'm sorry, but it's time to call it a day. You're not good enough for what you're doing." Then it becomes personal.
Yeah.
And no matter who you are, I'm sure you're not going to like it.
No. And I know the wounds take time to heal, Steve. But no, thanks for talking so in depth about something that I think is a really, really important part of our show, and important to talk about as well, and important for fans of all football clubs to have a better understanding of, what actually happens.
And by the way, it's not all fans.
Of course. But fans who
you get tens of thousands and thousands of people who want to come and support that club and support the manager and support the players. You get a certain percentage.
What I meant by sorry,
but I think it all feeds now, though. A lot of it feeds on the social media is a brutal, and I keep away from it. I've never looked at it. I've never once before. Sometimes your media man might come to you.
That's the danger when you get it forwarded to you.
Yeah, your media man come and says, "Have you seen this?" And I said, "Listen, I don't want to know at Newcastle League. I don't want to know. I don't want to hear about it. You see it, get influenced by it. You deal with it."
Okay. On a brighter note, let's talk manager approval index. Let's see.
That's better.
Yeah. This is some interesting stuff, because this is about Man United, Steve. Let's talk you through it, because I know this is I'm interested what your thoughts are on the data, which I'll tell you about in a second. But it's the first time that data has been from supporters has been analysed independently, and that we have verified that they are a fan of that football club. So you can't play the game and pretend to be a Manchester United fan. You are verified as a Manchester United supporter, okay?
Okay.
So, just for example, Ruben Amorim, pre-season, this is his statistics with our approval index. Pre-season optimism, 62% of Manchester United fans supported Amorim. 12.5% no. Undecided 25%. So he had 62% of support of match going.
Was this pre-season?
This is before a ball's been kicked in the Premier League.
Which is quite a staggering amount, I have to tell you, isn't it? Compared to what happened last season when
it's high?
When they finished 15th.
Yeah, I guess that's probably reflected because of the signings that they made over the summer.
Yeah.
Buoyed by that, new optimism, fresh start. It's his team, new players. Okay. Before the Liverpool game, it was down to 37% in favour. 29% no, 34% undecided after the Liverpool game. So this is one day before Liverpool, 37% supported him. Straight after the game, 61% in favour. Post Brighton, three in a row by that point, 82% support. So he's gone from pre-Liverpool 37% support to 82% after the victory against Brighton. 18% undecided, and not a single supporter in the focus group doesn't support Amorim. Not one fan says he's not for us. So look at the changes.
It's incredible. It's incredible what happens, and just shows you in a matter of weeks. I think the one thing that we've all got, we all like him. We all like him. We all want him to do well, because underneath it all, we all understand that he's a really, really decent human being. And that stands out from afar. I don't know the fella. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with him.
His conduct is
very... the way he handled himself, the way he conducts himself, and the way he is, then we want him to succeed and do well. And for me now, it's great to see them, Cunha, for example, and Mbeumo and Sesko, they've hit the ground running, and the goalkeeper too. Maybe he could have done better for the goal on Saturday, but I honestly believe that they've bought well. And he's made some big calls to let, the likes of Rashford out and Garnacho and people like that. He's made big calls. What reminds me a bit of what Arteta did at Arsenal. He's got rid of the negativity of what he thinks, and he's putting his team together. And we've seen a little bit of something that we hope continues. And I really, really hope that it does continue, because we all want Man U to become out,
all of a sudden, Steve, they're up there. But that's what 3 wins in the early phase of a Premier League season can do, right?
But it's probably 5. Is it 5 out of 7? Yeah. 5 out of 7 he's won. So there's a chink of light there. And I do believe, as I said, the players that they've brought in can only help them. And it's great to see the improvement and just how quickly it just shows you.
Are you surprised by this volatility?
Yeah, I mean,
as a manager, are you?
Look, we all
use
data now on whether you're, measuring a player of the stuff how far he runs, or the data on expected goals and this, that, and the other. So we're all driven by data now and given by it and all the rest of it. It staggers me. It fluctuates like that within a couple of weeks. But
Steve, it's extraordinary from 37% pre-Liverpool.
Extraordinary, but after beating Liverpool, give every Man United fan, if you're a huge Man United fan, you're right behind them and saying good on you. So
would you, if you had this data available to you as a Premier League manager, would you look at it?
Yeah, you would look at it. I would look at it and
what would you feel about it?
I don't know how I would take with that.
Because some managers, Steve, I think would say 82% and think, well, what about the other 18%? Why isn't everybody behind me?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get 100% behind them. The one thing I will say though, Neil, where they're quite unique, I've never heard the United faithful in the stadium get after any manager. You know what you see in other stadiums where they make it pretty well known that they're disapproval.
You played if we go back to Sir Alex, I was there at Old Trafford in December '89. I don't know if you remember the game, but it was the first time he dropped Mark Hughes.
Yep.
Palace won 2-1. I think Bright might have scored twice.
You're going to say that now, Crystal Palace fan.
No, of course. As a Palace fan, don't get me wrong. You remember when you win at Old Trafford, and that was a big win for Palace at the time. They got promoted that season, but if there was a manager approval index at that time, what would Sir Alex's? What would be the if Manchester United fans had been polled and we'd verified them independently as we have done here, where would he have been in December '89 after a result like that?
Yeah. I think, look, there's no dispute that it took him a bit of time where probably in today's world you wouldn't get it. But the people need a big pat on the back who support him. Bobby Charlton in particular was unwavering. And so when you read Martin Edwards' book, so was he too. They realised that
they've got it. It's just behind you. It's here. So it's on the table. There it is.
The backing that they gave him, that they knew all the work he was putting in, especially with the younger element. I mean, to put Kiddo and Nobby Stiles in charge of in that particular time, to bring back the kids of the youth team and how important it was to Man U, and to see it then a decade later in '92 flourish like no other's done before is testament to him, really. So, all the people who were in charge then were all for him, and they were absolutely steadfast, and it's decided that he was the man and he was the one who was going to take us forward. And that, I remember when I was at Newcastle, going back to Newcastle, we're playing Brighton away, and we were poor on the night. We got beat badly, and I got a phone call off Mike Ashley, and I thought, oh, here we go. We're playing poorly. We've just been beaten by Brighton badly, and the phone rang at 7:45 on a Sunday morning, and said it's, hello, Steve. Good morning. It's Mike.
We all know what those calls feel like from ownership at 7:45 on Sunday. You're lucky it was 7:45 in the morning, by the way.
Yeah. He just said, oh yeah? I says, I'm not good enough. Apologise. We've got to be better than what we were last night. And he said, well, don't listen and talk and don't read the newspapers, or you are my man, and I'll back you as best I can. And if there's anything I can do to help you, right, I'll try and help you. Get on with it. Make sure you win next Saturday and keep your chin up. Phone went down. Didn't expect it.
No. Kind of support you want from an owner.
And what Jim Ratcliffe did last week was say that the managers, if he needs 3 years, he's going to get it. Which, if you're Ruben or you're any manager, say, well, fair play. Yep. Fair play to him. Of all the things that Jim Ratcliffe has done, in my opinion, that phone call and that statement that he made last week was fantastic. If you're the manager of Man U.
Yeah. I'm sure it gave him a lot of confidence, and Amarin's certainly doing well with that victory at the weekend against Brighton at Old Trafford. Let's move on to the press conference. Your favourite bit. How did you feel about the press?
I was always fine with them, Neil. I always thought that, look, I'm going to be as honest and as genuine as I possibly can.
As a player at United, who would you? Can you remember names that you?
Back in the day, there used to be Jack Steggles and Peter Fitton, and they used to, you'd get to know them, but there'd be 5 or 6.
Yeah.
There wasn't TV channels, radio station channels, YouTube, this, that, and the other, that every word, every press conference is live on the telly, basically,
Yeah.
It wasn't really like that, so it only become later. And then I thought, well, I'm just going to be as honest as I possibly can and try and be as guarded as I can, because, you say one word out of context and the whole thing can come tumbling down on you very, very quickly.
Was there ever a time when you enjoyed it?
Enjoyed it? There was times when, listen, if there's times when you have to take what it is, I don't think you could ever really enjoy it.
Did you feel like Mourinho?
Certainly pre-conference, pre-press was okay. Afterwards, I think it's the most difficult. You've been beaten badly and you have to come and face people where you don't really want to get into the equation of, why you're sitting there really. And I found that really difficult at times.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a manager and you've just been beaten and your team's beat poorly, how do you come out and defend them when sometimes you've got to, put a brave face on and say, well, today we didn't do too badly, but you did.
No, of course. Yeah.
So
I know the challenge.
It was a challenge.
See, this takes me on to this takes me on to our first question, actually, from Patreon founding member Es Lottie Barcelona Ashton. And she's asking, what is it like dealing with journalists in a press conference, particularly young journalists, telling you what formation you should be playing, and how you feel after a tough defeat? How did, because it was something that as I got older, Steve, did I start to think, okay, but an Arsenal press conference, for example, and I'd look at Wenger and I think, okay, 3 Premier League titles, 8 FA Cups, 7 FA Cups, or but 3 Premier League titles. You've built great teams, and I think, okay, he's looking at us, and we're asking him, why did you substitute Lauren in the 62nd minute? And you think, but I'm going to manager. I'm going to make a decision. But those are the questions that how difficult is it to adjust?
And then it gets the other way if you made a good substitution and they come on. And that's when you start judging. You think, hang on a minute, I can't win this. So I can't win this. The press conference afterwards, when somebody asks you a question like that, why did you make a substitution, and why did you play that formation, or why did you play X in that particular position, is something which you have to defend yourself and say, but because I'm the manager of the club, and at that particular moment, I've made it. Now, if you've made the wrong choice or the right choice, then you have to take the rap for it.
Yeah.
Of course.
But with tactics, so you had that incident, but Dwight Gale said that you weren't interested in tactics. But how did you feel about a former player saying something like, because that is something that is clearly designed, it's going to hurt, isn't it?
Yeah, I had the utmost respect for Dwight, and look, at the end of the day, he couldn't get in the team when I was at Newcastle. I always think then there's always a slight gripe, and whether he thought it was all about tactics, I think you get pigeonholed into this idea that certainly the lads who are employed, who the coaching element and all the rest of it, and who we had on the training ground every day, it was a bit of an insult, where you think, hang on a minute, you're not really interested in tactics.
Because I know one of those guys, Stephen Clements, who's worked with you at a lot of different clubs.
Yeah.
And I know Steve is one of the most assiduous, determined, hardworking, passionate people who is utterly devoted to his craft.
Yep.
You can't accuse that guy of not being interested in.
Yeah.
You just can't. If you meet Stephen and you know him, you just can't possibly accuse him of not being interested in that side of the game.
Yeah. I think Dwight walked onto a podcast and said what he had to say, and I don't know whether he actually thought about what he was saying. But you're right; it was an insult to Clem and to Aggers too, who I think if you ask any player who's played under Steve Agnew, they will know that he's a very, very decent coach.
Sure.
And why I've employed him over the years. So look, if you go into management like you are, you're going to get an insult thrown at you. As I said, especially with somebody who is not particularly playing every week, who you don't pick every week. But I felt disappointed and
you would
disappointed with Dwight. Of course,
yeah, of course. Another Patreon member, John Williams, he's on our fan advisory board. He's asking, do you wish you'd played the media game in a different way? And if so, how do you feel you would have done it or could have done it?
I don't think I could play it a different way. I think some people want to play it and they're not themselves with it. I always try to be as genuine, as honest as I possibly could. And if people
And the other thing
if people see holes in that, then fair enough. But at least then I'm not trying to fudge it, if you like. I'm not trying to give you some sort of bullshit which I don't believe in.
And you get the other thing I would say, Steve, is I mean, look, most managers I would say I'd put into this category, but you never felt like it was a hassle for giving up because I know that you are giving up your time for TV, for radio, for written media. You have a lot of media to do before a game. I never felt that it was something that you resented.
No.
You knew you had to. I know you knew you had to do it, but I didn't feel that you really resented.
No,
you
no,
knew
I
it was
didn't
part of the game.
I always, as I said, we've all got jobs to do, and I'd like to think that I'd give them the respect that they deserve, whether they're behind a cameraman or asking the questions or wherever they are, or a journalist. I never thought it was a real chore. No, I didn't.
No.
Because it's a vital part. Look, it's why we all enjoy it so much now in the build-up to the games. When I'm looking from afar now and you see the constant scrutiny of the Premier League manager, he's press conferences live on TV. Afterwards, it's live on TV and showed around the world. So it's a lot of responsibility.
You even did a mini press conference before you came on this show.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, final question. Patreon member, one of our vice presidents, massive Juve and Crystal Palace fan, Alessio Tonato, and he says, "Did you ever come close to managing Manchester United?"
I believe when Ollie, I was in the frame a little bit, but I think the timing of it, I just left Aston Villa, and the timing went me against them. But I believed I was in the frame then. As far as I know, I wasn't that close, but I was led to believe that was the case.
Does it haunt? Would it haunt you? Did it haunt you? Does it haunt you that you didn't get the chance or won't get the chance to manage that club? I'm not saying the opportunity's passed you by, Steve. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, it's definitely.
You
passed
said that, but you've had a long career in management, so it was
definitely. But look, I was privileged to captain the club when it was just starting of the Premier League era. To have 10 years nearly of my career at Man U, I would hate to sour it really. You know what I mean? I would like to, even though, listen, if you're in football management and that comes along, then don't get me wrong, you'd have jumped at the chance. I do believe it's gone, that situation. I'm exactly happy that I played and represented the club.
Career.
I had a great career there.
You definitely did. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that career now, because right behind you is a shirt that when I showed it to you earlier, you didn't recognise it.
I know. How sad is that, by the way?
No, but as a you love you.
Now I still can't envisage Crystal Palace wearing that in the replay. All I can remember is the blue and red in the first one, and that's where.
Hopefully, that still haunts you. That game, by the way.
Oh, it does. Yeah.
No,
Ian Wright haunts me.
But the reason I say it, Steve, is because it's clear. When we talk, is you have extraordinary passion for the game, and it's stitched. It's stitched into the fabric of everything that you do, and you want to talk about it all the time. And the same for me. So that's why when I pulled that shirt out of a bag earlier, I said, "What shirt is this?" And you didn't know, and it's because the shirt is so unusual as well.
Yes,
it was only worn once.
It's awful as well, isn't it? Unless you're a Crystal Palace fan.
The history behind that shirt.
I really enjoy Crystal Palace.
The history behind the shirt is that's Jeff Thomas's shirt, number 8.
Yes,
captain the team, and the yellow and black stripes are the same colours that he wore for a team called Littleborough, where he grew up. He played for a team, Littleborough United.
So it was all based around the captain? It
was all based around the captain. So they needed to produce a shirt at very, very short notice for the replay.
Wow.
And Butler put that together within a couple of days, right? Because the game was obviously on the Saturday, the replay was on the Thursday. They put that together at very, very short notice.
Wow.
And that was the captain's, not decision, but it was his influence, because Jeff said his favourite colours when he was a kid, or the colours that took him to began this football journey for him were yellow and black.
Then I'm going to take it all back. I think it looks absolutely wonderful. I think it looks absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
but that's a great story, and I didn't really realise that. But when I first seen it, I didn't quite grasp it that it was Crystal Palace's shirt in the replay in the cup final. As I said, I remember.
Is that the game that you felt got you? Is the victory holding the trophy aloft that night?
It was the.
Did it feel like, okay, this is the moment we prove we can win something?
Well, I think it gave everybody a hand, and winning the cup, sometimes you need a bit of luck. We never played at home, but we never played anybody in our league, and it wasn't the Premier League then; it was the old First Division. Mm-hmm. So every team we played away from home was not in our division. So sometimes, even in the semi-final, we played, I believe it was Oldham.
It was Oldham, yeah.
Yeah, it was Oldham. That, sometimes you need a bit of luck. It was the start. I really think the cup winners final against Barcelona was the one that really, because we won that one, that put us into the cup winners. I think it was that one that was the real turning point for everybody. It still took us a while to win the Premier League, but it was the start, and us winning a trophy that year. It was the first major trophy. I won a trophy at Norwich, but it was the first really one with Manchester. Set us on the road a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. We started the show talking about Liverpool, and I remember Jurgen Klopp saying there are lots of gaps. He's left Arne Slot lots of gaps, as in there's lots of trophies that can be won here. Slot won the Premier League in his first season. When I think of that word, that phrase he uses, lots of gaps, and I think about the stadium at Old Trafford, are there gaps there? And I'm thinking about statues, because you've got the Holy Trinity, right? Obviously, three of the greatest players in Manchester United's history. Is there a case for other players from your era that you've played with who Manchester United should think about? Is there a space? Is there a gap for others?
Well, I think if there was three in my era, if there was three, then Robson would have to come into the equation. What a player and what a captain he was. And I got to Man U when I was 27, and I think Brian was approaching 30.
Well,
I couldn't
didn't realise you were
believe
27 when you got there.
Yeah. I couldn't believe how good Brian Robson was. We didn't see live TV all the time, did we?
No.
We didn't see it drummed in your face, but he was truly inspirational as a player and a leader and a captain. It was incredible. And then I would go to the best young player I've ever seen, and the biggest certainty I've seen when I was 14 is Giggs. Giggs is quite an amazing player, which deserves, if there's any going to be statues around. And of course,
he's just on that. Giggs isn't even in the Premier League's Hall of Fame, Steve.
Then, yeah. Well, sometimes that's ridiculous, because when you look what he's won, has he won 13 Premier League?
He's the record. Yeah, he's won 13.
Incredible, and the longevity of him. Then Giggs, and then of course, I've never seen anybody take on Man U like Cantona did. Cantona walked in as if this is my stage, this is my club, and he'd only been there a week, put the collar up. And to do all of this and all this bravado that he had to be some player. And by God, he was that good that I'm convinced that we would have won the double in 95. We won it in 94. We should have won it in 95. He had been around, and we certainly won it in 96. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing of all of that was that team couldn't really play in Europe because of the foreign rule, which is the 94 team, I think, is the greatest team I ever played.
But that's what stopped playing you for Ireland, isn't it? In the in the World Cup.
Yeah.
I could have went
to Ireland. Yeah, I was closer to playing for Ireland than I was England. But Fergie stopped it because I was going to be a foreigner.
Just a couple of things on England. But does that eat away at you at all?
Oh, I'd love to play for my country, that's for sure. But I accept it when you go into management. Bobby Robson came out. The great Bobby Robson came out and said, I should have capped you. And you under Graham Taylor, that wasn't going to happen.
Sure.
So I think I knew I put it to bed very, very early. I never even got in the squad. So it is something which, people ask me about all the time, but I was never given the opportunity, and for that I accept.
Yeah. But everyone knows that you're a top player. 3 Premier League titles, wasn't it?
Yeah.
3 Premier League titles as Manchester United captain. Just a couple of final things, I think, Steve, because you've just come out of management at Blackpool, but I know that every time I meet someone who's got football in their veins and in their blood, that when they say they think they're done, they're never quite done. What does the future hold for you if you are done? What are you going to do next? Because I don't see you.
I think I
know you'll go to the cricket. I've no doubt about that.
I'm going to the cricket. I'm going to go to the cricket. I'm going to go to the cricket and cheer on England.
Yeah.
Which is something which, if I was managing, then I wouldn't be able to do, of course. Listen, you never know. Look at Martin O'Neill going in today at 73. So you can never say never. But I have to say, you know, you're not getting any younger, and I do believe it is the younger element which are now the way maybe football's gone. So, look, I've had a really, really wonderful innings, and then to be involved 45 years or whatever it is quite staggering. So I'm never going to say never, but I think I'm done.
We will see. We will see. If you're back on this show ever again, which I'd love you to come back on, I'm sure it will be as a manager somewhere. I don't know, it'll be Premier League, Championship, League One, but I don't think that you can resist it. Thanks very much, though, for coming on Sack the Show. It's been absolutely fascinating to listen to you and hear the stories today, Steve. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you.